Nigerians. More importantly, how soon will the president give his assent to the appropriation bill as passed by the National Assembly?
Pertinent question, Kingsley. But we also have a second topic of discussion, which is the by the Joint Health Sector Unions, otherwise known as JOHESU.
Now, the industrial for well over a month now appears to have no immediate end in sight, as negotiations between the government and JOHESU have not yielded much. And as at last week, the negotiations were said to have broken down.
This morning, we intend to make sense of the strike action and the bone of contention. We shall also look at the cost of the strike to patients and those seeking one medical service or the other. This is Good Morning Nigeria here on the Nigerian Television Authority, Africa's largest television network. I am Joy Usiago.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Joy in also welcoming you to the program, in the course of which we shall have our regular complimentary segments, including newspaper review, business, and sports. It was a very busy weekend for sports, by the way, from soccer to tennis, and you name it. But in the meantime, we shall kick off with the news, and our newsreader today is usually our business reporter. He's right here in the studios with us. That's Chimaobi Watanaji. Chimaobi, pleasure to have you with us.
All right, thank you, Kingsley. Good morning. Welcome to the news. Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Babatunde Raji Fashola, has assured that works on the construction of the second Niger Bridge will not be interrupted by lack of funds. The minister said this during the project assessment at the site in Oka.
What I can tell you is that contractor will not leave the site again because of funding. Yes, 3.44 billion naira is compensation we have received. That's a lot of money to pay for land. We have paid 1.8 billion. Our strategy is to pay in sections where the contractor immediately wants to work, because we keep receiving more claims.
And meanwhile, the people of Nasarawa State at a solidarity rally in Kefi town have commended the federal government for the approval of $995 million to fix the Abuja Kefi Akwanga Makode Road project. The project, when completed, is expected to scale up economic activities and provide relief to motorists.
Nasarawa State appreciate all that Muhammad Buhari has been doing and have taken their relationship with Muhammad Buhari as something that is for better. And I assure you, by the time the election comes, you will know that Nasarawa State is the second home of President Muhammad Buhari.
And now to politics. More state congresses of the All Progressives Congress, APC, conducted across the country have produced leaders in the states. Our correspondents report that the various congresses were conducted in an atmosphere of peace and order.
The history of APC in the Jigawa State, for the first time, a congress for the election of party officials at the state level is taking place peacefully.
When you're a leader, you must be magnanimous. You must be humble in victory. You must accommodate others.
And in education, academic experts have advocated for collaborative efforts towards raising the standard of mathematical sciences in the nation's institutions of higher learning. This was at the closing of the maiden edition of statistics competition for tertiary institutions in the country, held in Abuja, where the University of Nigeria and Nsukka emerged the overall best in both individual and institutional categories.
We are committed to encouraging and supporting activities such as this, leading to the improvement of the teaching and learning of mathematical sciences at all levels.
And in health, Nigerians have been advised to eat well, engage in adequate exercise, and ensure regular medical checkup in order to be free from terminal diseases. This was the view of medical experts at the medical outreach at Aleita community in the Federal Capital Territory as part of the 2018 World Hypertension Day.
Awareness about the importance of prevention of various diseases, especially hypertension and kidney disease.
By checking their blood pressure, by checking their sugar level, by checking their urine for protein, glucose, ketones, and all that.
Participants of the 2018 Seminar on Radio and Television Expertise Training for African Countries have urged the African Union to integrate national channels of all African countries into the StarTimes satellite and other services providers in all countries. This was contained in a 21-point communique issued at the end of the 3-week program held in Beijing, China. The participants say the training should be complemented with grants of broadcast equipment to facilitate the digitization switchover in Africa. The participants also urged China to source and transmit more African content to the Chinese, just as it does in African countries, while acknowledging the support of China to the development of Africa, especially the Belt and Radio Initiative. The 41 participants urged the most populous country to do more for the continent. And that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll be back with Joy and Kingsley after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Non-governmental organizations, popularly called NGOs, have helped immensely to bring help to those who need them in the society.
God bless you wherever you are.
NGOs deserve some accolade and really should be applauded.
I congratulate your NGO for championing this cause.
But as they say, too many cooks spoil the broth.
You don't just wake up and decide to start an NGO. It doesn't work like that.
The high rate of proliferation of NGOs has made it a tool of greed and also ineffective.
I found the money-making machine.
Especially as the aim of many NGO founders these days is to enrich their purses. Join your rib-cracking comedy, Professor John Bull, this week in the episode titled NGO.
Well, you're a very nice person now. Are you sure 30% will be enough for you?
I am 70, you're 30, bro.
Ha! Come back there. Are you using size to share the money?
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow,
the largest data network. Glow Unlimited.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped. We are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Give me the value pack. Helen!
You do great value shopping.
Absolutely. I'm a champion at getting value.
Then you must have bought the Hapic 200 ml.
Why Hapic when I have this?
Even after applying them 10 times, they won't give a sparkling clean toilet.
Impossible.
Challenge. Detergent and bleach can't give a sparkling clean toilet even after 10 times. But Harpic 200 ml gives a sparkling clean toilet at one go.
Wow.
Harpic 200 ml. Real deal. Now only 200 naira.
NTA Television College, an affiliate of Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, has over the years maintained her reputation of putting together courses that are highly relevant to manpower needs of the broadcast industry. The college is again organizing a 4-week course on English grammar and pronunciation for broadcasters, slated for 21st May to 15th June 2018. Come and take advantage of our top-notch and intensive course designed to grow the skills of television presenters, script writers, news editors, journalists, hosts of live events in just 4 weeks. Venue, multipurpose complex, NTA Television College, Rayfield, Jos. Fee is 100,000 naira per participant, accommodation inclusive. Be there. NTA Television College, Jos, training you to be the best you can be.
To the outer framers, the hat tippers, the fringe goers, you don't need to hide anymore. Try Dettol Even Tone. It cleans and helps to reduce the appearance of blemishes caused by oil, dirt and germs, giving your skin a healthy feel for an even better you. Dettol, be 100% sure.
Dettol soap is now also available for 100 naira only.
Thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Federal government issues 2-month ultimatum to tax evaders to pay up, and federal government approves additional 4 billion naira to housing contractors. Details with Comfort Amodu.
Nice to have you join me. I'm Comfort Amodu. Now, Nigerian's economy has continued to show signs of recovery following various financial interventions by the federal government to boost the economy. This financial experts say is the right step in the right direction, noting that more needs to be done to boost the capital market. Professor Uche Waleke, Head Banking and Finance Department, Nasarawa State University, says the growth and effectiveness of the capital market is dependent on the policy direction of the federal government.
Yes, we are the biggest economy in Africa, but income distribution is going by the Gini coefficient. It's nothing to write home about. The money, the wealth has not trickled down to the masses, so people will not have enough to eat, let alone save. It's only when you save that you can talk about investing in the capital market. So the whole of this is tied to the performance of the economy. If the economy improves, I can assure you that the capital market will also pick up.
And the federal government has issued a 2-month ultimatum to tax evaders to pay up or face the full wrath of the law. Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, says from the 1st of July 2018, tax defaulters stand the risk of prosecution and 5 years imprisonment, as well as additional 100% extra charges of outstanding tax. The federal government has approved additional 4 billion naira to housing contractors across the country. According to Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, the approval is in fulfillment of government's commitment to its National Housing Program initiative. That's business news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues. I'm Comfort Amodu. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Comfort. Next for us now is a review of the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
Our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyebi, is in the studio. Good morning, Bayo. Hope you had a good weekend.
Yes, I did, Joy. Thank you. Good morning.
Thanks
good morning,
for
Kingsley.
joining us.
Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Bayo. I hope. When did you return? Were you in London for the?
Well, no, I wasn't.
Oh, okay. I thought you were. I thought you came back. I thought you arrived this morning.
I followed what they describe as a multiracial wedding, yes. And what shocked me was the statement that the prince will never be king.
Well, in terms of a line of succession, you know, the line of succession is quite clear. I mean, it's by the rule of primogeniture, so if you have others, you know, who are already well ahead of him, then of course they also. But of course, it's always in line. It depends on the position. Yes,
there's a lining, but nobody knows future. Anything can happen. Those on the queue and the lining, but to say categorically he will never be king.
That's a bit, well, that's the British monarchy for you.
Yes. Exactly.
All right, let's take a look at our front pages. Very busy for politics and economy. And of course, there are also sports stories, but we don't have those sports stories on the front pages. Let's begin with This Day newspaper. This Day newspaper, the latest story says, APC leadership and PDP meet today to address grievances. APC leadership and PDP met today to address grievances. By the way, NPDP was one of the legacy parties that, or factions that formed the APC. How to stop delays in corruption trials by NJC committee. That's the headline. How to stop delays in corruption trials by NJC committee. And then above the nameplate of This Day newspaper is a headline. Presidency, that's the kicker. Buhari is bad business for corrupt politicians and public servants. That story is on page 12 in greater detail. Above that is a story on the economy. Despite receding inflation, election spending may compel MPC to hold interest rate. And lastly, from the front page of This Day newspaper, right at the foot of the front page, just on top of the strip advert you have there, it says, bandits abduct housewives in Berene Gwari. That's on page 9.
All right, let's go quickly to the Tribune. The lead story there comes with a kicker, which says, 2019, presidency warns against voting out Buhari, and it has two riders. Says, return of PDP will reverse gains made. The second rider says, PDP says 1.4 trillion naira subsidy payment fraudulent, backs governors on probe. Details of that story can be found on page 2 and 33. And a little bit below the nameplate, we have this story which says, we won't recognize parallel congresses. APC and WC insists. Details on page 10. And at the foot of the front page there is a similar story that Kingsley read out. NPDP meets APC today. That comment is attributed to Baraji. It comes with a rider which says, SDP, Labour Party, name set, announced condition, may adopt SDP. Details on page 10. And let's go quickly to The Punch for the lead story. Taraba Middle Belt groups reject Army panel report on Danjuma's allegation. Says Army can't be judged in its own case. Details on page 12. Bio.
Well, from what has been read so far, there are political cases. There is a reaction from Kotrimo, the committee appointed by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, and also a fallout from the statement made by former elder statesman General Theophilus Danjuma. But let's start with the political stories. Already there's indications of fence mending between what has been described as NPDP, one of the contraptions that formed the alliance that saw to the birth of APC. I think they are now meeting with the National Working Committee and delegation of the APC to eliminate the possibility of having an NAPC. You know, the evolution of NPDP strengthened the alliance APC that saw PDP losing out of power. History, they don't want to repeat itself. But meanwhile, the APC organized congresses across the nation, and reports across the nation are showing different flavors. There are some congresses that were said to be very successful. Those include those were done in Ogun, Bayelsa, Ebonyi, and Abia. Others were described as parallel congresses, which the National Working Committee has already made pronouncement about, that they will recognize only the congresses that were organized by those appointed by the party headquarters. The parallel congresses were held in states like Oyo, Taraba, Yobe, Lagos. Delta has its own Congress postponed till today, and Lagos, there was a big challenge. Those who were dissenting were saying that the Congresses had to be held in the 245 INEC recognized wards, not the 377 other wards created by the development centers that the Lagos state government has developed. But all said, APC has a lot of fence mending to do before the outcome of its congresses, because the actions are quite across the nation. But unfortunately for them, the few parallel congresses and a few of them that went into conflict, particularly like the one in Ondo and Enugu, are overshadowing the successes across the nation. Now, I'm talking about the statement by the Army High Command. You will recall that the Nigerian Army set up a panel to investigate allegations that there were collusion between some elements in the army and bandits who were terrorizing citizens in Taraba State, to the extent that Lieutenant General Theophilus Danjuma, retired, advised the citizens to defend themselves. The army has come out, a 10-man panel that was set up has come out with its findings. They said there was no collusion on the part of the army. Rather, there were collaboration within the security operating agencies within the area. They said most of the cases there seem to have some politically motivated undertones. They urge the elder statesmen to be very cautious. However, there have been reactions about it. Some groups, the ethnic groups, in fact, Tif ethnic group, Juku ethnic group, have all condemned the report. Taraba state government has also condemned the report. Some civil society organizations say the army cannot be a judge in his own case.
All right, Bayo, that story again that I read earlier from the front page of this day, it's also on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper, and in fact it's a late story, and it says, with the kicker presidency, Buhari, bad business for corrupt politicians and civil servants. This day said public servants. Of course, public servants, it's a much wider category than civil servants. Above that and below the nameplate of Blueprint newspaper, Nigeria-China currency swap, ban on 41 items subsists. That's according to the CBN. The story continues on page 6. And then below the photograph on the front page of Blueprint newspaper, there is the headline, Pope's representatives for Benue mass burial tomorrow. That's on page 7. And then, of course, you have other headlines that are also there. Salary, one headline there says, salary, man removes expatriates 7 teeth in Niger. That's on page 14. That took place in Minna. And transferred cultists never named Saraki and others. That's according to the Director of Public Prosecutions, page 5.
All right, for more headlines, let's go to the Punch newspaper. A little bit above the nameplate there, we have a story which says, Buhari will receive past 2018 budget this week. Details of that story can be found on page 36. There's also one which says, passengers sue Medview Airline for cancelled flight. Let's go a little bit below the lead story. There's a picture story there which says, suspected crude oil thieves and pipeline vandals arrested in Kaduna, Niger and Delta states being paraded by the police at Dede Police Command in Abuja on Friday. And rising U.S. interest rates threaten capital flows into Nigeria. Details on page 33. And on page, Mina worker knocks off Indians' 7 teeth. That's serious.
That's right. And Bayo, there's an obituary for the media. The story is right there on page 8. On page 8, we can't upload that on the screen for you to see now. Well, there's a headline is NGE mourns NNMD to cause demise. NGE stands for Nigerian Guild of Editors, and the NNN is New Nigerian Newspapers. The managing director, Tukor Abdul Rahman, aged 58, passed away on Friday, and he was buried in his hometown, Daura, Katsina State.
Development. Tukor Rahman is a colleague. He was heading the New Nigeria, and unfortunately, New Nigeria has been in serious crisis for a long time. The Northern Governors Forum, under the auspices of NNDC, were trying to see how they could revive and bring back the New Nigeria. Meanwhile, let's look at the stories about the Johetsu. You recall that last Thursday, the National Industrial Court ordered the Johetsu to return to negotiation table. First, to return to work and go to negotiation table. So far, it is only in 3 states, Lagos, Kano, and Yobe, that order has been observed. However, members of the union across the country seem to have refused. Over the weekend, the union members of Johetsu were traveling between Benin and Auchi. Unfortunately, they were involved in an accident. Sure. There were 40 of them. 19 of them were seriously injured. There were no Johetsu members to attend to them. They were attended to by doctors and consultants, and there were no Johetsu members to give other ancillary services to them. What goes wrong sometimes comes around.
Yeah, but incidentally, that's the second topic that we are discussing on the program this morning. It's after taking a look at the 2018 appropriation bill as passed by the National Assembly. The Johetsu industrial action is our second topic. The accident, of course, is not reported on the front page. The story was online. Yes. With regard to the accident that they were involved in, and this is precisely why stakeholders have been pleading with Johetsu members to call off the strike and then proceed, especially also with the outbreak of Ebola in DR Congo, yes. And the need for all health workers, to be on standby, as it were, to help stay that off. All right, Joy, let's take a look at the editorial. The editorial this morning is from the Daily Independent newspaper. It's actually a front page comment that starts on the front page and then jumps to its editorial page on page 14. And it's on dangerous attacks on the judiciary. Of course, the peg for it is the crisis that took place in Port Harcourt following the assault by hoodlums on the High Court premises of Rivers State. That's what the paper is talking about, and it says that as the countdown to the general elections draw near, President Muhammadu Buhari should pay greater attention to securing the courts to prevent incidents of this nature.
Well, the judiciary actually is in the limelight today. You recall that the NJC set up the courtroom code, the Corruption Trial Monitoring Committee. They already sent in an interim report. The inauguration was on 1st of November, and by 26th of November, they have totaled about 2,306 cases that fall within the ambit of their mandate. And what did they find? They found out that most of the delays in cases are a result of poor prosecution, and the delays too are on the part of the courts as well as the prison officials. They said categorically lack of requisite experience and competencies are major factors in causing delay. Now coming to the editorial, on May 12th, hoodlums attacked the High Court in Port Harcourt, damaging the courtroom, the library, and other facilities. You will recall also that at the earlier part of 2014, when the government in Ekiti was incepted, there was an elections petition tribunal that was also invaded by political talks. In all these two instances, it is political talks or persons associating with political parties and their interests that are causing this mayhem in the courts. And the court is supposed to be the last hope of every ordinary man. You will find out that since the inception of democracy in the country, politicians have the habit of not accepting defeat and going to courts, tribunals, up to the Court of Appeal, or some even up to Supreme Court before they are satisfied. Unless people are ready to accept that in an election, there will always be one winner. And in the court case, there can never be a draw. There will always be one winner. The court must be given an unfettered environment to be able to carry out their duty, that of the justice. And unless that is done, the court cannot be the last resort for the ordinary one, not even for the politician.
All right, Joy, I think that's the much that we can take. But I would like to thank you. Just this one, as the saying goes, one for the road. From this day newspaper, there's a front page photograph there. We had skipped that earlier. If you look at the front page photograph on this day, you can see the governor of Lagos State, there's Aliko Dangote, and to his left is Femi Otedola. Last week there was a photograph that was circulating, a photograph as well as a video clip that was circulating on social media showing Femi Otedola, who is chairman of Forte Oil, taking a ride in the Molue. That's the Molue, it's the bus in Lagos. So I'm wondering, this event took place at the Lekki Free Trade Zone, and yesterday, did he ride another Molue too? All right, so that's what we take for our newspaper review this morning. Bayo, thanks for being around.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us, Bayo.
Okay, we'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll kick off with our discussion segments.
It's not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
When I was a little girl, I loved spending time with Mum and Grandma cleaning the house. I knew what Grandma's secret was. I was so excited to sing in the choir.
And your shirts are always so white.
I knew what Mum's secret was. Today, I'm a modern woman that still trusts the secrets passed down to me.
It's Jik, of course, the trusted bleach which can be used all around your house for amazing results. Shh, it's our little secret. It's no secret. Jik removes 101 stains. Just Jik it.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual.
You
have no problem.
For the three put.
You are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah?
Welcome.
You take that one.
Yeah, take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have? You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Momo to come to chocolate rice made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Dettol team is visiting schools to teach children how to protect themselves from diseases. Do you know how we get illnesses like diarrhea, cough, and cold?
No!
They are spread through germs which are everywhere. You collect germs that cause diseases. You pick up germs from any surface, like when you don't wash your hands after going to the toilet, while playing. And then you can get sick because of germs. That's why you need to fight germs to stay healthy by washing your hands and taking your bath with Dettol soap to protect from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Wash your hands. What you have to do is bath yourself. Dettol soap every day. Wash your hands.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the daring and invincible Louis the Mosquito. Responsible for 200 malaria cases all on its own. Is there anything that can kill Louis? Morphine! Presenting Mortine's Power Guard. Its powerful formula kills malaria mosquitoes fast. So, get Mortine's Power Guard.
Thank you for staying with us. The 2018 budget was finally passed by the National Assembly after 6 months in the oven. The next stage is accent and implementation. Now, to set the tone for our discussion on the budget this morning, correspondent Mitaire Ikben has this background report.
Last Wednesday, the Nigerian legislature finally passed into law the 2018 appropriation bill, 6 months after President Muhammadu Buhari presented a budget proposal of 8.6 trillion naira to a joint session of the National Assembly. Before the eventual passage of the budget, there was growing anxiety among Nigerians as lawmakers missed several deadlines to seal up the budget. To hasten the passage of the budget, President Buhari had instructed federal ministries, departments and agencies in February to quickly defend their proposals before the National Assembly, as the budget had delayed. After the long wait, the National Assembly has finally passed a budget of 9.1 trillion naira, which is 500 billion naira higher than what the executive arm of government proposed. Chairman of the Senate Committee on Appropriations, Senator Danjuma Goje, attributed the 6% increase in the budget estimates to increase in international oil price put at $51 per barrel, as against the proposed benchmark of $45 per barrel. Highlights of the 2018 appropriation shows that 3.512 trillion naira is for recurrent expenditure, while 2.873 trillion naira is the capital budget. Additions to sectoral allocations in the budget include 46.72 billion naira for security, 57.15 billion naira for health, 106.5 billion naira for works, power and housing, 15.7 billion naira for education, 10 billion naira for the judiciary, and 44.2 billion naira for the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC. While Nigerians heave a sigh of relief over the eventual passage of the budget, there are still concerns over plans for its speedy implementation. How soon will the president give assent to the budget? What impact will it have on the economy and Nigerians? How can the prolonged delay in passing the budget be averted in the near future? These and other matters will be discussed by guests on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Mitari, for that background report. We're now being joined in the studio here in Abuja by Professor Ibrahim Jera Umaru, former head of Department of Economics, Kaduna State University. Prof, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Also joining us is a regular face on the program, Dr. Emeka Okengwu. Dr. Okengwu, thanks for joining us this morning.
It's always a privilege to be here. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, and our third guest here with us on the studio is an investment analyst, Niyi Akinsiju. Mr. Akinsiju, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria today. Let's begin, gentlemen, by getting your views on the passage, as it were, of the appropriation bill 6 months after the president laid the budgetary estimates as well as policy proposals before the National Assembly. May is coming to a close, and we hear the budget has been passed, but the president hasn't given his accent. Professor Umaru, what's your take?
Well, it's just unfortunate that a document of huge proportion like this, particularly as it affects the economy, is passed after 6 months. However, I think there's still hope that subsequent budgets, will not take this long.
What is the source of your hope? The source of your optimism that we won't have the same systemic delays that occasioned the passage of the bill, appropriation bill, in May?
Yeah, well, if you have noticed the relationship between the executive and the legislative arm of the government in the last couple of weeks, it leaves one with nothing but hope that such a consensus and a peace-building process, will be sustained subsequently.
All right, Professor Umaru, we'll come back to you. Let's go quickly to Dr. Okengwu. The appropriation bill has been passed and we're almost moving close to the end of the year. What's your take on this time of the year when it is being passed?
Well, there's if I could crave your indulgence, there's an addition to pass, and Kingsley mentioned it. And until you have that assent, it doesn't become law. So in having this conversation, I think we must put a caveat.
Do you envisage a delay?
Well, it's not envisaging a delay. Can we interrogate the other two appropriation bills that had been passed by the legislature and sent to the presidency? Was anyone ever assented as was sent? Answer is no. More so when you are loading 500 billion on top of what the executive had sent. the answer is it's almost certain that the president won't be assenting to it if you follow his work pattern. And so I don't think we should start celebrating. However, I know that it's important for us to be able to look at the figures. So my own opening statement would be, we don't have a legal document yet until the president says no or yes to it.
All right, Dr. Okengwu, thanks. But again, just to ride on the caveat that you have indicated again, the National Assembly did say, and this was coming from the spokespersons, that the increase in the quantum of the budget was arrived at on the basis of a consensus, or if you like, understanding between the executive and legislative arms of government. But regardless, the details oftentimes will provide some of the sore points in terms of whether or not the president would give his accent immediately or otherwise. That's to say the point that Dr. Okengwu is talking about. Akinseju, what's your take?
Well, I'm hoping that the president would consent to the bill as soon as possible. Already by the time of its passage, there is distortion in the economy, as it were. The federal government is the largest spender. And I'm hoping that going forward, the two arms of government, the executive and the legislative arms, would have a consensus nationalistic approach to this. And I'm saying this because there is still a need to go back to a unified fiscal year, you know, for budget passage and implementation. When you have a unified fiscal year, it helps enhance activities of the budget, especially now that we know that there's a tendency for this bandwagon effect in what the federal government does by the state government, and naturally it will have a follow-up by the local government. So when you have the three tiers of government implementing budget at the same time, it creates a more organized approach, you know, to the implementation of the budget, and it's also impact the economic environment, because again there will be a direct linkage to the private sector, which, I mean, 60 to 70% of the private sector companies and entities also have their budget December, their fiscal year December to December, you know. So when there is a unified approach to it, it helps reinforce the effect and the impact, you know, of the budget. So if the National Assembly looks at this from this point of view, I think going forward, 2019, it will help enhance the economic development, as it were.
I'm not sure, by Joy, what the details are now with regard to the relevant clauses, but we'll recall that in the last, that would be the 2017 Appropriation Act, there was a clause inserted therein that this budget or the Appropriation Act would run for a 12-month period, meaning that it still has a couple of weeks left for it to run. So, but Niyi Akinseju has raised a valid point. Professor Umaru, what's your take on this? Is it possible for us, going forward, to at least streamline the fiscal year from January to December, rather than, you know, having this crossover from one year to the other? This is 2018 now, and I'm sure if we take a look at the details, probably we'll be talking about a 2018-2019 budget.
Well, I'm not so bothered about this, because if you would recall, the capital aspect of the 2017 budget started its implementation around May or so, and now we are in May. And so I don't think there will be much distortion as far as the capital aspect is concerned. And be as it may, of course, we should expect the executive, you know, to still live up to its expectation, you know, by implementing the own discretionary aspect of the budget, because you must pay salaries, you must take care of overheads. So I don't think the main issue is realigning the financial, you know, the fiscal year. I think the problem is how we can reduce the time it takes, you know, to pass, you know, this budget. And I think it is the responsibility, the constitutional responsibility of the two arms of the government, you know, to find a way, you know, to reduce that.
But Niyi talks about the distortion in the economy as well as the knock-on effect, or if you like, the disequilibrium that arises where you have other tiers of government and indeed other critical sectors of the economy being out of sync with the national budget that doesn't run effectively from January to December?
Well, that is true, but I don't think it is a major problem because if, for example, the 2019 budget should be passed early in January, then what happens to the financial year? So I don't think the problem is realigning. The problem is that it's purely political, largely political. You know, the executive and the legislative arm should find a way, and I think it is possible, you know, to reduce the time, you know, it takes to for this process, you know, to see it through.
Thank you, Professor Moro. Going back to Dr. Okengu, let's assume that the president says yes in terms of accent. What impact will it make on the economy at this time of the year?
It's a very risky assumption. It's a very risky assumption. I think we should play safe. However, let's accepting without considering that they've said law. Let's assume that the president says yes. It doesn't still solve the problems. Because if you look at the budget, I hope as we travel along, we're going to be interrogating it, you know, piecemeal by piecemeal. Right now, we are a nation that is at the verge of starvation in a lot of areas. I mean, there are reports showing that a lot of people are that below the breadline. Okay, and I thought that we should have been focusing on food security. We should have been focusing on industrialization. We should have been focusing, you know, on science and technology. We should have been building our economy, you know, based on the fact that, you know, the cost of forex is actually what technically pushed us into recession. Even if the president assented to the budget, well, the old budget is still running. I think it's still going to run up to June, I would want to imagine. But what bothers me more is that nobody has seemed to demand that we look at what you call the mean-term expenditure framework. That should have been able to now look at this budget, you know, more holistically and more clinically to be able to find out what areas we need to focus on. So for me, Kingsley had also mentioned distortion. I wish it was only distortion. You know, what you have is a total disconnect from the national and the subnationals. You know, we're making this budget look as if it's the budget of Nigeria. It is not the budget of Nigeria. It is the budget of the federal government. And in the federal government of Nigeria, you also have the state governments who also run their own budgets. You know, but in between now, that's why I don't want us to call it a distortion. It's important we understand what is going on here. That part of what happens is that out of legislation, some states get monies from federation accounts. Okay, and they get 49% of it. And then the federal government gets 51% of it. Have we also now looked at how we are tying the programs of the states? Because they must also pass through appropriation if you're going to be getting public funding to what is going to be happening at the national. So in interrogating the federal government process of passing budgets, we must just not see that the legislature or the upper house is delaying it or there is some friction. We must see, you know, the deeper damage, okay, it can do to our general economic structure in Nigeria. So to say, yes, I'm excited that the budget has passed, I'm going to say, oh, thank goodness it's all over at one level. But hey, we must also now ask ourselves, yes, it's over, but at what cost? And I think this is what we're going to be trying to focus on now. Because for us to be able to have, you know, practically all our institutions in disarray, in some form of, you know, need for very quick intervention to the other, ranging from your security agencies to your education facilities to even the electioneering bodies. And then you're passing a budget by May. And you are knowing the president's antecedents. He is definitely, and I can say that I'm not him. Okay, if I had gone into that assent, what happened to the SS crude account? The essence of having your budget either projected higher or above selling prices, whatever, you know, is higher, you put in the SS crude account. Whatever is lower, you support from the SS crude account. So why would you not be having this concession? What if tomorrow, after your concession, the oil prices dip or increase or more? What are you going to do? record the budget and increase some more money. So I think we should be more proactive in thinking our country, because we are in an election year. A lot of activities are going to be focused now more from governance and administrative engagement to politics and politicking. And it's important that we have that clearly understood.
So, you say politicking?
Oh, yes, politicking.
Politicking.
No, politicking.
No, politicking we would say.
Okay.
I would say. Okay. Well, let's pause here a bit. Thanks a lot. You've raised a number of points. Neya Kinsijo, let's bring you again into the conversation. One of two areas that I would like you to touch on, of course, I know that you have your own perspectives on this. Emeka Okengwu is arguing, for instance, that, look, food security ought to have been a priority item in terms of the philosophical underpinning of the budget. That we also ought to have, talked about other very critical things. But again, when you see in terms of the broad allocations, recurrent and capital, the argument always was made, because he also talked about industrialization. The argument always was made that you couldn't possibly industrialize if you didn't have the infrastructure. That's why it's below, to get it going. Do you have any quarrel with that? That's one point. Before we get into the parameters, for instance, the 3 or 5 naira allocation, as well as hiking it from 45 naira $45 to the barrel to $51 to the barrel.
Well, I think so far so good, and I'm saying so far so good. Bringing in the indicators, especially the inflationary rates. I think about 9-10 months ago, food inflation was as high as 21%. And by April, it has fallen by NBS figures to 14.3 or thereabouts. So it tells us that the price of food items is increased. I mean, it's reducing. And of course, if it reduces, it means there is access in the market. And I'm quoting NBS figures now. It also means that we are supposed to do more. I want to look at the budget for agriculture, and not just what is allocated for the recurrent, because mostly recurrent on agriculture is usually high, compared to the capital. And it's the capital really that we need most. And I want to see a situation where capital budget, for agriculture competes, with even road construction, because starvation is not exactly a prospect. And we know, even by issue of contentions and conflicts in certain parts of Nigeria, there are issues of starvations already, So there is a need for targeting. I think, anyway, I am hopeful, because the economic environment is getting stabilized. If you start looking at different segments of the economy, the inflationary rate, the foreign reserves, and price of crude oil, what again, even yield on treasury on fixed income securities are also falling back. We are even hopeful of a reduction in the MPR. So I think so far so good. If we compare to where we were this time last year, we have moved some notches upward.
And therefore, it's, in terms of the mismatch of allocation, because Okengwu is arguing that, look, they ought to have been more focused in terms of allocation on food security, on industrialization. And I'm saying that my question to you was it misplaced, therefore, to have played up infrastructural allocation with regard to capital projects? Because that's what you hear, including even what has been topped up now by the National Assembly. They've mentioned works, power, and housing, for instance. Of course, security and defense are also there. Professor Umaru, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think that is a valid observation. I share that view too. And particularly, we must, if we really want to appreciate the budget, we have to place that at the backdrop of the medium-term expenditure framework. And well, my own understanding is that the budget, the figures, the allocation were done in line with consistent with the with the midterm expenditure framework. However, there are two issues that I think the federal government will have to consider. One is the promise of increase in wage, in workers' salaries and wages. That is likely going to have, a serious implication, for inflation control, which I think the budget is silent on. And then, secondly, I don't subscribe to the benchmarking oil price at 51 or so. I still believe that the benchmark should have been 45, so that we can save the difference for the rainy day. By and large, by the time you take this into consideration, you have no option, but to begin to fear that we are in for a big problem.
All right, let's go to Dr. Meko Okwengu. He talked about not being comfortable with the bench oil price moving from 41 to 51. What is your take on that judgment?
It's sad, Joyce, that every other country that started or discovered oil or started their oil industry when we did ours have all developed local capacities to value process every aspect of their oil and gas, trajectory. It is a shame that Niger Republic, that had found less than 5 million barrels of oil or so, had said they were not going to take one drop of that oil until they built refineries for it. So Niger hasn't taken one barrel out to anywhere. And this is us trying to become one of the 20 biggest economies globally. We're still talking about oil. And let me please put this as my personal statement and conviction on record in the national television. We got out of inflation, out of recession, because the oil prices changed. Okay, and I want you to please, Joyce, go and investigate what I'm about to say. There is no magic that government did to get us out of recession. The price of oil just increased, and we got credit worthy once more. So if you are not looking at what the real issues are, and somebody wants us to start talking about $61, $71, $81 as the basis of deciding a country's life and future, and you have no hold, you have no play, you have no stake. The PIB that we have so-called or so passed has remained what it is, a document that has also been passed, that has not been assented to. And then you have presidential candidates now saying to you, when you vote me in, I'm going to privatize this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. Getting back to your point, my sister, I'm just trying to bring to the fore the need for us to have some kind of new thinking, that our budgetary process is the problem we have in Nigeria. First, that's why I tried to link it to where you come from. I mean, for you people, you're lucky, you're staff of the federal government. For those of us who are not in any way linked to government, show me one aspect of that budget that impacts on my business. Not one of it. Because the aspect of it that would have impacted on my business would have been captured in the capital component of the budget. And there is nothing in that capital that shows that all they won't be doing will be building infrastructure that are linked to the activities of those agencies and departments or ministries. There's nothing that links it to, developing an economy that you can say will be predicated on what you call project or cash-based project, cash-based, project-based cash flow models. So that you remove this your window. And remember that when we started, in this administration, everybody was talking about the zero budgeting, systems. How come we're also not bringing it into the conversation?
Yeah, but that was silently, jettisoned or pushed aside. But I'm wondering, Emeka Okengo, you know this yourself. An appropriation bill is an entire package. It contains the expenditure estimates as well as revenue anticipated. But there are also policy issues that are embedded in the appropriation, and usually in the breakdown will have greater access, to the policy issues that are embedded in all of this. That's to say, in response to the question of how does this directly impact on your business as a private sector person, that's why I'm raising this point.
Yes.
But significantly, and I would like Nii to also come here, America has raised a number of other points. What does it mean, for instance, that in 2018, the National Assembly, with regard to the appropriation bill for the year, has said, listen, we are ratcheting up the price, the projected price of crude oil from $45 to $51 because of the prevailing of the prevailing prices on the international market. What does that say to our diversification of the economy and therefore diversification of our sources of revenue? That's one leg. Take that one, and then the other leg we will take would be, fine, if we are increasing the benchmark from $45 to $51 per barrel, it means that other costs are also going to increase. Okengo was talking about Nigeria Republic. We import a great deal of our refined petroleum products. What does that mean also for the payments of the subsidy? Nii?
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, and I think it's an historical contention. If the question had been if the National Assembly has the right to increase or to meddle with figures presented by the executive arm of government, and like Professor and Doc said here, I agree. The National Assembly don't have a right to increase benchmark, because oil benchmark, as it were, determines the convenient threshold, for revenue generation. And of course, we have the excess crude account. I expect by now that the National Assembly would have formalized the excess crude account, and we have a body of law and guidelines managing, the excess crude account. So with that, it's allowed to flow either up or down, and government can now, the executive can now do whatever they want to do within the law, with the excess crude account. It will leave, even the medium-term expenditure, as framework as it were, will not be too bothered with given price, because we understand our wholesale dependency on crude oil production and pricing. So to that extent, we have a direct link to our excess crude oil account, which must have a law by itself. So that we'll also avoid this scenario about 3-4 weeks ago on the Tucano purchases and extra expenditure by the executive. So I think that is where, rather than keep meddling with the figures, the National Assembly need to put an act, to control the excess crude accounts. Now, again about diversification, that is a major headache, and I'm praying that I can see this budget realizing that in the short term, as it were. One, it is late in the day. There are so many activities within a fiscal year. Yes, the budget talks about 12 months, but a fiscal year is about calendaring. You must be able to know what you are doing in your first quarter, in your second quarter, and what you want to achieve in your third and fourth quarter. You don't even know now how to start categorizing the quarters, as it were. If it's starting either June or July.
When is Q1?
When is Q1, when is Q2 and all that. Because you are supposed to gather momentum, with your expenditure and your revenue generation too. And there are times, especially during the December to March period, that is when revenue generation, especially from taxes and all that, goes up. So there is a need for that linkage, and if we cannot, if we cannot achieve that, if it's not even impacting diversification, it is impacting revenue sources of revenue diversification.
Professor Maru, what's your reaction to all of these issues? In particular, you know, $45 per barrel to $51 per barrel. What does that say with regard to our economic diversification? And then the subsidy regime, because we now know that it's virtually a cost. Each time oil prices are going up, we know that we are going to have to pay for it in terms of higher subsidies.
Well, yes, let me come to that. I think it will be fair, you know, to analyze the 2018 proposed budget against the backdrop, like, you know, like I said, the medium-term expenditure framework. You know, because these are issues that usually are best analyzed within the medium and long-term period. And I think my take, as far as diversification is concerned, with respect to the 2018 budget, I don't think I've seen anything that should make me smile, you know, because ultimately, you know, the budget between 2017 and 2020 will be adjudged based on, you know, what these three budgets had done. And I think there is very little for us to rejoice as far as diversification is concerned, because diversification, you know, like I said, is a medium to long term, and the fact that we are still reliant on oil indicates that, you know, diversification is still has been thrown out of out of the bag. But I think, to be fair, if the figures I've seen are anything to go by, I think to be fair, you know, to the budget, I think the budget is consistent with the priority laid down by the government in the medium term. You can see that power and housing, transport, consumes a large chunk of, you know, the capital budget. So I think we're, you know, it's still consistent. But for us to, you know, to say that this budget, in addition to the previous budget, has impacted on the economy, I think it's too early, you know, because it is a medium term.
I'm wondering, Joy,
yes,
you know, if you recall last year, there was some snag with regard to the 2018 appropriation itself, because the condition precedent was for the submission of the medium-term expenditure framework, and the National Assembly members, they quarreled over that. I'm not sure how that was eventually resolved, whether they got it and then sorted it out going forward. They ought to have considered that before before even the presentation of the 2018 appropriation bill. But there are a number of points. Emeka Okengu, Joy, I think you were itching to ask him a question.
I wanted him to react to the issue of diversification. Would you say we are paying lip service to the issue of diversification, because this government seems to be laying so much emphasis on the need to diversify, but going by what we have in the appropriation bill, would you say we have done well in that area?
Okay, I'm going to bring some dimension now, crave your indulgence, for us to be able to also bring two issues to the table. One is what they call economics, and the other one is what they call economy. So what are we diversifying? Are we diversifying our economics, or are we diversifying our economy? If we are diversifying our economics, it simply means that we're not diversifying our trade relations. Okay, where you're getting your wigs and your gowns and your shoes and your wristwatches. Probably will stop buying the Russian Rolex wristwatches for 1,000 naira. And then people like Kingsley will need to carry receipts to be able to show that they bought their own from Piaget shops. Or are we diversifying our economy, which is now building what you call a substructure, demand-driven, result-oriented economic development program? We've never had it. The closest we've had in Nigeria is what you call the subcontracting model. I say this very regularly, that promoted valorization, which is just, I make it seaworthy, take it out there, and then bring it back. So until you have that framework that begins to interrogate, Joy, first, everything you're holding from pen to paper everything you're wearing, from shoes to makeup, where do they come from? What makeups do they have? What quantity and volume do you need? You can't just talk about diversifying the economy through a federal government budget. No. You must diversify the economy from getting the subnationals and the national segments of the country to be able to sit down together. And that can only be achieved when you have what they call cogent, reliable, credible data of human resources and your natural resources. It is only then you can now begin to talk about the science, the technology, the skills, okay, that you need to begin to now improve on this. The last time we had a conversation, I asked you a question. It's probably, you say you're promoting Nigeria. The chairs are not imported. We agree. Made by a carpenter in Kobo, we agree. Where did he get his form from? Where did he get the chairs from? The cloth from? Where did he get even the buttons, the fancy buttons from? Where did he get the trade from? So each time people talk about economic diversification and then they throw it to what you call technically made estimates of a program. Because first, remember that when we're going to interrogate this, if you have time, you're going to be finding out that already the budget has a deficit of about 2-point-something trillion without any income. We're saying that if we're able to generate the 9 trillion, there is going to be a deficit of over 2 trillion. So we must begin to think our country, from a much more dispassionate and holistic perspective, so that we can guide those who are leading us to be able to say to them, no, you're getting it all wrong. Prof had kept talking about the MTF, which I mentioned. The MTF is supposed to be a 3-year program. Now, we should have been insisting, the National Assembly owes us a duty as Nigerians to have released a report of the oversights. Now, the president says, let the ministers come and see you, and then let's pass this budget. All the other budget sittings we were able to watch on national television. How come these last 2 weeks that everybody seemed to have rushed in and everybody seemed to have agreed, when shown? So was there a consensus? Was it driven by hard facts? Was there a lot of hardball playing? Knowing that whatever it is you do, the target is to make us self-sufficient. So if we're talking about self-sufficiency, I am more comfortable than talking about diversification, because self-sufficiency would have just simply brought us to where we're supposed to be, self-sufficient in this, self-sufficient in that. But the moment you bring in diversification, you might be interrogating economics, which is what you run. As against economy, we should promote your self-sufficiency.
All right, Dr. Okangu, thank you very much. There's also the other leg to diversification of your revenue sources. For instance, if the government ramps up its taxation drive, it's likely, therefore, to have more revenue coming from that perspective. But your points are noted. And as always, we're having reactions coming in from our viewers. Our Twitter handle is right there on the screen at NTAGMN. We are taking those tweets now. Mike Ayankwo is verified. Says the delay in the passage of the budget will definitely affect its implementation. We are now in the second quarter and nothing has come out of the budget. Now, before we know it, we'll be talking about environment. Maybe the president should include the budget in his October 1st speech.
And this one is coming from Dele Jack Solomon Merge. He says, we are yet to learn from our past mistakes. Health and education are critical for economic development, yet budget allocations are still low. We call the executive to address the problems before signing the bill into law, while the surplus should be used to finance critical infrastructure.
Victor Ohioswama, since the advent of democracy in 1999, this budget took the longest time to pass. It's obvious now that the National Assembly has created a new budget cycle of May to June, considering the fact that both the 2016 and 2017 budgets ended in May. However, I hope the budget can still be implemented.
And this is coming from Festus Akimboyewa. He says, the National Assembly impliedly shut down the economy by delaying the passage of the 2018 budget. To promote certainty and stability, the executive and legislature must put politics and personal interest aside and establish a more open and professional approach to the passage and implementation of our budget.
Another one from Dele Jack Solomon. It says the 2018 budget is based on a crude oil price benchmark, and we have increased the benchmark from $45 per barrel to $51 per barrel. This is share market speculation. What happens if oil price falls? We must be aggressive on diversifying our economy. A mono economy is stagnation to our development.
Obina Agbo tweets, for me, that budget won't achieve anything meaningful. Yes, because once there is no sound policy framework, no matter how fantastic a budget may look, it will amount to building on an already faulty foundation.
Festus Akimboyewa, sadly, I have not seen anything tangible in the budget recently passed by the National Assembly that will help Nigerians to cope with the cost of living. It's worse that the imminent increase in the minimum wage and oil subsidies are not captured in the budget.
Sani Michael Omakoju tweets, when and how the budget 2018 is passed is no longer an issue. What is the issue of concern is why is it that our capital expenditure always performs below 37%, whereas we have almost 200% implementation for recurrent expenditure because we even borrow to pay salaries. Why?
All right, Joy, those are the tweets that we have in the meantime. Gentlemen, of course, as we said, we have a second topic to discuss. So let's begin to bring this to a close in the meantime, because there are always the matters arising with regard to the 2018 appropriation. This is an election year, quite clearly. And there are all kinds of issues involved with investors, with the people themselves. A budget normally would excite certain kinds of passions and certain kinds of interest. What is it? What kind of, again, to use the street lingo, what kind of vibes are investors getting? What kind of vibes are the people feeling ahead of the elections in 2019? This is when, of course, you have a lot of election years spent that can have some positive impact on the economy. What are we getting, Lee?
And some negative impact too, inflationary rates.
That's right.
The positive, inflationary rate is declining, and that will make any investor happy, that will make any Nigerian happy. Principally, I see a lot of promise of road construction, railway construction. And I think that's a showcase for the federal government to show performance. Most Nigerians would not read performance into the immaterial. They want to see the material. You are constructing 50, 60 kilometers of road. It's near my village. It's near my town. I can see it, So to that extent, I think the 2018 budget would have an impression on Nigerians. 2017 budget, if we do a recap, has been able to translate some of this into reality. And you go around, you see a lot of activities in terms of infrastructural development. Now, I hope, that we will be able to farm up our revenue sources, as it were, to fund the 2018 budget. The environment is optimistic, there are increase in revenue generation. The customs had shown that it could go above the 1 trillion mark. VAT has also increased compared to what we used to have, especially the 2017 threshold and all that. So, and of course, the flow of investment, into Nigeria, what we call capital importation, had also been impressive, though we see we see the anxiety of activities in the U.S. Security yields and all that, which has gone up to 3.5%, and already there's a drawback, by some foreign investors and all that. But again,
and a dip in our foreign reserves.
Yeah, and a dip, yes, for the first time, because of that. Of course, we have a direct relationship. Our economy has a direct relationship with the U.S. economy. So when there is increase in yield in the U.S. securities, fixed securities, it also impacts our own. But what I am praying for is the continuation of our refinancing plan, as it were, because we've taken money, we are taking Eurobond to refinance our domestic debt. I think the debt office would be able to manage this because this is sensitive to financing the budget.
All right, thank you, Mr. Akinsoju. Let's go to Dr. Emeka Okon. We've talked about a number of issues here, and we can see so much complexities around this budget. For your closing thoughts, what can be done to make it a lot easier in terms of implementation?
Thank you. If you go in front of the headquarters of the United Nations, there's a sculpture there that tells it all. It's a man who's bending a sword, and he says, let us turn our swords into plows. If we are to build a cohesive and inclusive country, we must link national security to food security as a first charge. If we are going to be having a consolidated budget that has everything to do with security, defense, let us stop buying guns and start buying rigs. Let us look at what we can be able to do with our human capital. Let us know how many we are in Nigeria. And truly, against this GDP that me and you are used to calculate, let it begin to be real. If we build our country where we turn our guns into plows, Joyce, my sister, we will build a country where you will need no guns to keep us to sleep well.
Well, thank you very much, Emeka Okengo. Let's know how many we are. Is there any indication that there's an allocation to the National Population Commission for the census? We're supposed to have a census this year, 2018.
No.
And if there is no allocation for that, then that means that, and the budget is supposed to run for another 12 months. Next year is election, so we are unlikely to have even the census in 2019. Very significant points. Professor Maru, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we should place more emphasis on diversification. You know, and of course you can use several indicators, you know, to know whether we are performing, we are moving on the right track or not. You know, then we should also prioritize human capital. Human capital. Here I'm talking about health, and I think one of our listeners emphasize on that: human capital, education, human capital, health and education. And also, our growth should be inclusive. What I'm saying is that we should emphasize on social inclusion. And I think if you look at the budgetary allocation to these critical areas, you observe that, you know, it is not something to write home about.
All right, we'd like to thank you very much, Professor Ibrahim Jera Umaru, former head of Department of Economics, Kaduna State University. Thank you very much for your thoughts this morning. We appreciate you. I would also like to thank Dr. Emeka Okengo, Development Economics. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's a privilege to have a chat with you every time. Thank you.
We want to thank Mr. Niyi Akinsoju. Mr. Niyi is an investment analyst. Thank you very much for your thoughts this morning.
My pleasure always. Thank you.
We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll dig into our second topic on Good Morning Nigeria. Stay with us.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Your perfect family is under threat by germs. Infectious diseases are now the world's biggest killer of adults and children. Every day, 16,000 children under the ages of 5 and thousands of adults die from infectious diseases. These infectious diseases are caused by germs. They are everywhere. An average human being comes in contact with over 1 million germs daily. In unclean water, dirty surfaces, in the toilet, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes. Germs can cause deadly diseases like typhoid, diarrhea, flu, and cough. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's 1 Cap Full for surface cleaning, in your bathing water, in your laundry water, for first aid, to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol Sure. Endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association.
Hold it! Me! I don't come out my hand from oil bunkering.
General, what you going to yarn? What did the yarn serve? I don't understand though.
Because they spoil our water and our environment. And they cause our people serious harm. Militants is said, you know good. Me, I not do again Sam. Because why? Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back. But if you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria, and we're reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As we indicated, we have a second topic for discussion this morning, and it is on the ongoing strike by the Joint Health Sector Unions, otherwise known as JOHESO. The strike has paralyzed activities in federal and most recently state hospitals.
Now, the strike has been on for about a month with serious effect on operations at all federal and state health facilities. What's going on? How can the situation be resolved? These are the issues we shall be raising shortly with our guests.
All right, the guests are right here with us in the studios. First, we'd like to welcome Dr. Omale Joseph Amedu. He's Director of Hospital Services at the Federal Ministry of Health. Dr. Amedu, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, and also here with us is Hamza Gudaji. He's a legal practitioner and legal counsel to JOHESO. Gudaji, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you.
All right, let's begin straight away with you, because last week there was an order by the National Industrial Court directing JOHESO members to return to work. Well, what is the situation right now with regard to obedience to that directive by the National Industrial Court?
Well, to put matters into proper perspective, indeed it is considered that the National Industrial Court, pursuant to Section 7 of the Courts Establishment Act, has the power, to grant orders, to restrain strikes and lockouts and what have you. But as at today, such order has not been served on JOHESO. So JOHESO is not in a position to comply with an order that has not been served on it. So that's the position of things. But I can assure you that JOHESO is a law-abiding organization. If there is an order to that effect, and whenever it is served, then the needful will be done.
Let's look at the issues on the table. What exactly is JOHESO seeking?
Well, you would understand across the world, in industrial relations, issues arise from time to time. In respect of this issue, there are basically two broad issues at stake. There's the technical, aspects of the issues, and then there's also the financial aspects of the issues. You would recall that there was a strike sometime in September last year, which was called off, after an agreement was reached with the federal government. However, The agreement is yet to be implemented, and that is what actually instigated the second wave, of strike action.
What is the crux of the agreement?
Well, part of the agreement says that the financial, demands of Juhesu will be looked into. As a matter of fact, pursuant to that understanding, I think a request has been even made, to the presidency for the release of funds, of about 22 billion or so. But that has stagnated. Nothing has come out of it. And the members of Juhesu, in their own wisdom and belief, decided that maybe they should go on another strike. With that, most likely the payment will be made. So basically, that's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Hamza Gudaji. I'm wondering, Dr. Amedu, you listened to Hamza Gudaji say that, all right, if and when there is an order, but in which case they are also served, they would, as a law-abiding association, respect it. What do you know at this time with regard to the return of Juhesu members to work, as well as, of course, the order issued by the National Industrial Court?
Thank you very much. Like you said, there has been an order by the National Industrial Court for Juhesu to return back to work because, Nigerians are suffering in terms of their health system. And almost all the hospitals are not working because it's only the doctors that are doing the work of the nurses, of the pharmacists, and the doctors themselves to make sure that the emergencies patients have been taken care of. Now, I'm aware that this, of course, the court is responsible for probably delivering this judgment to Juhesu. We have a copy of the judgment, and for who to have gotten a copy of the judgment, I'm sure that they will have also served Juhesu. As I speak to you, they have not called back the strike yet. None of them, only very few of them who volunteered to join the workers and working, but they've not called off the strike. But I'm sure that there's a process going on. They must have been served. If you say not served, I'm not sure aware of that. They must have been served.
All right. I'm sorry. Please proceed, yes.
Yes. Now, he has been talking about agreements. I'm glad he said that the agreement was signed sometime September last year, because what Juhesu has kept on saying is that an agreement has been signed long time ago. I tell you, before the coming of this administration, there has not been an agreement signed by government with Juhesu, that I can tell you. And it is this government who signed first time the agreement with Juhesu September 30th, 2017. This agreement, there are about 14, 15 demands in the agreement. 14 of them have been sorted out by government, except one, and which is the salary adjustment. Even the salary adjustment, from the meeting we had before the agreement was signed in September 2017, we had agreed that within 6 weeks, whatever processes were to be involved in resolving that issue should be done by the Federal Ministry of Health. By the 8th December 2017, the Federal Ministry of Health had completed adjusting the salary and forwarded to Mr. President. In the process of forwarding to Mr. President, of course, salary and wages had information from the Federal Ministry of Health to enable them to prepare the adjustment. They came up with 22 billion. And how did it come about? They took care of both health workers and non-health workers, from level 1 to level 15, Conhes 1 to Conhes 15. Instead of looking at the critical health workers, which are from Conhes 7 to Conhes 15. Now, the issue at stake here is there are two important issues. First, we have doctors on one side and non-doctors on the other side. And of course, you know that ab initio, before independence, there has always been a relativity between the doctors and the non-doctors. It was the 1974 Udoji salary system that crashed the relativity massively.
What do you mean by relativity? Explain that to our viewers.
Relativity is a term used to show the difference between the salary of doctors and the non-doctors. There's a gap. For example, if I'm a doctor and I'm not a doctor, there used to be a gap of ratio of 1 3.33 as a ratio between the doctor and the non-doctors. That was pre-Udoji. After the Udoji salary system, this was crashed to almost 1:1. And the doctors protested that, look, this will not help the system because world over, doctors and non-doctors don't earn the same thing. And so Nigeria is only a different country. So it was the protest by the doctors to ensure that the relativity of before pre-Udoji is restored. And so in 1991, government in her wisdom restored this relativity, relative, not even completely. That's why they came up with the medical salary scale. Now, of course, these were reviewed at several times to make sure that all health workers were taken care of. By 1998, this relativity was again completely crashed to 1:1. And doctors said, look, this is not possible. Because Jewish members, they have a way of making sure that once this relativity is put in place, they crash it down. So from 1998, when it was crashed to 1:1, the doctors have again protested.
Was that during the regime of General Abacha or Abdulsalami Abubakar?
Abdulsalami Abubakar.
All right, let's continue.
Now, so government have been agitating and telling government that, look, this relativity, if it's not restored, it will affect the entire system and it will not meet the world order of health system. So by 2014, government again look at this situation. Look, for there to be peace between the doctors and doctors so that they can harmonize, in fact, in 1998, the salary was harmonized to crash the salary scale to 1:1. And this adjustment, the doctors fought for the adjustment of this harmonized salary to bring an adjustment to have relativity, which was done in 2014. Now, government entered into an agreement with NMA in 2014 that, look, because of the issues that have been raised, government has analyzed them and see that there's a need to put that facility in place. So it was adjusted in 2014. In fact, it was not an increase in salary in 2014 for doctors. It was not an increase. It was an adjustment to an error already committed. Now, the same 2014, since 2014, of course, you know, Juhisu went to court earlier on to ask for several issues, especially the issue of skipping of salary scales, which unfortunately and erroneously, that judgment was granted. And that has again caused lots of issues that are coming up today.
What does that? I'm sorry. No. We'll come to you. You'll have your time. What does that mean? Jumping salary scale. What does that? Was that also relative or what? Let's our viewers understand this.
It's skipping. It's actually an unknown word in the dictionary of medical services because I don't really know how that issue came up. But instead of moving from when you come into a new employment, you're employed at a certain stage, say level 1 to level 17, whatever it is. Now, the CONHES structure, which is the salary structure of non-doctors, start from CONHES 1 to 15. Now, each profession comes in at different cadre. Some comes on CONHES 7, some CONHES 8, some CONHES 9. Now, in due time, people are promoted into CONHES 10, CONHES 12. Now, the Juhisu people, I don't know how they went about jumping from CONHES 9 to CONHES 11. That means in their structure, there's nothing like CONHES 10. Now, if there's no CONHES 10, there are cadre of people, either they are principal officers or they are assistant principal officers that belong to a particular level CONHES 10. Now, that has been abolished by Juhisu. And it's very illegal. When they did that, doctors also came and said, well, if the court says they should jump that level, then they should also jump down level, which comes as the doctor's level is the CONHES system. So doctor now jump CONHES 2 to CONHES 3, which has distorted the whole health agenda and is illegal. The federal government and the federal Minister of Health said it's illegal, and we are in court to readdress that issue. But to come back to the issue of salary adjustment, since December to date, government has done all that is possible to adjust this salary. We met to them since the last 6 weeks, over 15 times. And each of these meetings lasts for not less than 4 hours. The Minister of Health is part of it, the Minister of Labour is part of it, the Head of Service is part of it, the Office of the Secretary of Government is part of it, Accounting General's Office, the Minister of Finance is part of it. We've tried to offer the best that government think can be given. Now, it's one thing for there to have that 22 billion on ground. It's another thing for the government to be able to pay this money. So it's not an issue of pay. You pay what is available, and we all know what's happening to the economy today.
All right, let's pause you in the meantime, Dr. Amedu. I know Hamza Gudaji. Yes, you've been. He's laid out a number of points, so take them seriously.
Yes, I think I will take the points he made. Some of them, you know, may be valid. Some of them completely out of place. Now, he said there's a judgment, you know, given by a court in 2014 with regards to skipping of Conhurst 10. That's a valid judgment of the court. Up till after 2 or 3 years, you know, that judgment was given. It was not appealed against. Therefore, it will be completely out of place for him to come and say it's an erroneous judgment, and complying with such a judgment, you know, will amount to an illegality. And the second issue with regard to that judgment, which is rather curious, is the fact that the benefits of that judgment, as at today, are being implemented in favor of medical doctors. In other words, because of that judgment, doctors are being paid about 1.5 billion per month, you know, in arrears. I think what the health workers are supposed to be paid per month in arrears by virtue of that judgment is about 1.8 billion. That is not being paid. And there is even a letter from the National Income, Salaries and Wages Commission to the effect that that judgment applies only to health workers, not to medical doctors, because medical doctors were not a party to that suit. That's number one. Number two, with respect to the order, he said, I'm sure they must have been served. Juhesu has not been served. Produce your proof of service, if you have any. Then, on the third issue of the disposition of this government, you know, with regard to this strike, we are willing to concede that this government has been quite responsive compared to previous governments. That is conceded. But nonetheless, more needs to be done in order to address these issues, because people are suffering, ordinary Nigerians are suffering. And the fact that they have taken steps, you know, to comply with the agreement of September 2017 means that they are bound not just to take steps, you know, in an attempt to comply, but to ensure that the agreement is fully implemented. I think that's what needs to be done. If that is done, then there won't be any issue of strike.
Earlier, I mean, the point was made that this has to do with the federal government. Why are state hospitals, Juhesu members at the state level, also on strike?
Well, Juhesu is a union which cuts across, you know, the federal government, state government, and local governments. So it's one union. And when pursuing an interest, you collectively pursue it. But there are also issues at state and local government levels. That's for sure.
But those issues are unique to the states and local governments.
Well, they cut across, you know, they are the same issues for health workers, and it's a union of all health workers suffering from the same issues.
But not all state members are on strike.
Yes, certainly.
Why
certainly,
is that?
Because some of the states, you know, from information available to us, you know, have complied with some of the demands. I think Kano is one, and Lagos, yes.
All right, Dr. Amedu, is there any likely solution to the problem?
Thank you very much. Like I have said earlier on, out of the 15 demands by Juhesu, 40 have been resolved. And the issue of adjustment, we have also adjusted. During the course of our discussion in the last few days, we've made 3 different offers. In fact, at the 4th meeting that will give them the final offer. We were there for 6 hours. They didn't show up. That was the last meeting. None of the members showed up. The ministers waited for about 6 hours on Thursday. They didn't show up. The last offer we gave to them, we had reduced relativity from the current 1.5 down to 1.2 to make sure that we meet their demand. But they are asking for parity with the doctors, which is not possible. There's nowhere in the world where there is parity, where parity exists between the doctors and the non-doctors. And then at this point, what they are insisting is that they should have the same basic salaries. Now they keep on saying that if they give them the same basic salaries, the doctors receive different allowances, which is correct. But allowances are based on the basic salaries. It's a percentage of the basic salaries. So once we make the basic salaries same across board, it means they are also on allowances and shift duties. It will still come out to be the same 1:1, which will not give us a healthy system in the health system. And we think that the best way to do is to give them the best option that the federal government can give to them. Let there be a relative peace in the hospital so that they can offer services to our people.
Godaji, talking about the issue of parity, I've heard medical doctors abroad say the same thing. So are you saying the union is not aware of this standard, which is a global thing?
The union is aware, and I will tell you, I can confirm to you, that the union is not looking for the same pay grade with doctors. There is actually an opinion that was given by the National Incomes and Wages and Salaries Commission to the effect that the demand of Juhesu actually amounts to reasonable disparity. That's the position of the commission. And in matters like this, I believe it is the commission that is the independent arbiter. And the commission said what Juhesu is looking for amounts to reasonable disparity.
All right, there's a question I have that I want both of you to answer. Why do we always have to wait until there's a strike action before we start thinking about modalities to solve the issue?
Unfortunately, this is a hangover of previous regimes, more especially military regimes, because I can tell you that under Nigerian law there are adequate legal mechanisms in place, although some reforms are required, but nonetheless, there are adequate legal mechanisms to avert, strikes. But, like I said, more especially under military regimes, for example, the Trade Dispute Act has not fully been implemented. Because there are detailed provisions in that act that, if utilized, can resolve disputes before they snowball into
all right, let's go to Dr. Amedu.
Amedu, yeah, Dr. Amedu. But just before Dr. Amedu comes in, Joy.
Yes.
There was a report that some Juhesu members were involved in an accident last week. Are you aware of their current?
I have the authority of Juhesu to deny that.
That they were.
Yes, those that were involved in the accident are not Juhesu members. As much as we sympathize with them, but they are not Juhesu members.
Oh, I see. They're not Juhesu members. That's what you are saying.
Yes, I have the authority of Juhesu to say
that.
Right,
my question was going to be, where are they being treated now since they're on strike? All right, Dr. Amedu. Dr. Amedu, well, just listening to the tweets that we have, because we are pressed for time now. Montana Farouk tweets, as the saying goes, the grass suffers when two elephants fight. Although I have not seen two elephants fighting in this scenario, but a fight between a prey and a predator, it is on this note I urge Juhesu to suspend the strike and return to work until the tripartite report.
Dele Jack Solomon Medj tweets, health records, pharmacy and laboratory departments of medical centers were shut down and nurses were not at their post because Juhesu is on strike. We implore FG through the Ministry of Health to address their 14 points demand quickly, because it's only the Nigerian masses that.
All right, Festus Akimboyewa, this last tweet that we are taking: while health workers under the umbrella of JHESU have the right to go on strike to put pressure on government, their current industrial action is bound to fail because of lack of support from Nigerians who see their demand for pay parity with doctors has just been greedy. All right, that's the much that we can take from viewers in terms of the tweets that they have sent in. Would like to appreciate Hamza Gudaji, who is a legal practitioner and legal counsel to JHESU. Thanks a lot for being on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you.
We also would like to thank the Director of Hospital Services of the Federal Ministry of Health, Dr. Omale Joseph Amedu. Thanks a lot for being on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's go over now to our sports desk.
Nigeria's under